Hi there, it's Jamie from CMO 102 Mania, and you're joining me on the first ever Famous Five podcast. For those who are unaware, this is the podcast where I get an illustrious guest from the Championship Manager 0102 community, and they pick their best five-a-side team from the game. In this episode, we've got Martin PlaysCM. You might have seen him in the comments down below doing his own youth challenge on his own channel, or hosting stuff like the Super League on Twitter. It's absolutely brilliant, and I hope you can join us for this fantastic episode. This podcast is in video form on here, but if you're going to go elsewhere, going to be in the car or anywhere else, then you can find us on most major streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the rest, and you can subscribe to us on those platforms as well, so you make sure you never miss an episode. Anyway, I hope you enjoy.
You can record it. You can record it separately. I mean, you don't have to.
I could. You're right. Oh, you've done this before. I still need to start this bit some way. I could just start it now with that. Yeah, I've done it. There we go. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. It is the Famous Five podcast. It's the first one, and I had an intro before because my guest suggested that I do so because I couldn't think of one on the spot. See, we always have good guests first, and that's the secret to having a successful podcast. So today it is a man who goes under the pseudonym Martin PlaysCM, also known as Martin, I believe. Yeah. Unless you're lying to us.
Oh, deceptively so. Deceptively so.
Unless you're called PlaysCM, that wouldn't be a good name.
No, it is. It is Martin.
It would be for telling, wouldn't it, if you were christened with the Championship Manager moniker, and then suddenly you grew up to be a manager on Twitter. So if you don't know, he is a wonderful, wonderful creator of Championship Manager content on Twitter. He's done stuff like The Race and the Super League. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. Looking forward to taking part in what is this? Is this the inaugural Famous Five?
This is the inaugural Famous Five, and so I was thinking of doing 11, but I thought that would get too tedious at some point. 11 players is a lot, but a five-a-side team, I can deal with that. I think we can all manage a five-a-side team. Obviously, because it's the first episode of the podcast, for those who are not aware, this is creating the ultimate five-a-side team with just Championship Manager 0102 players. So Martin today is going to select that team, and I will begin with asking what your formation is.
Right. So my formation, as you mentioned, we've only got sort of 4 positions to choose from, and then it becomes a question of whether you're going to go defensive or you're going to go attacking, selecting an extra forward. So I've kind of gone with, let's say, a defensive-minded and an attacking-minded midfielder. So one goalkeeper, one defender, and then a couple of midfielders and a forward / striker. That's going to be my formation.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, there's a lot of great midfielders in Championship Manager. It's actually my favorite players often come from the center of the park. Usually central, but actually right now I'm getting quite lucky with a lot of wide men in my saves. So maybe that's due to change. But if you'd love to start, I'd like to hear that goalkeeper.
Yeah, so I mean the goalkeeper perhaps is a little bit controversial because he doesn't hang around for ages in the game, but because of my heritage and what that brings with it, I can't really overlook Peter Schmeichel. Appreciate that he's not got long left in the game, but he definitely is there, and you can pick him up if you're that way inclined. If you want a European champion, then he's definitely a guy that you can go to. For your side. I mean, I appreciate there's the longevity is not really there with some compared to some of the younger keepers in the league. I mean, Fabian Barthez is obviously still there, was a consideration for me as well. There's the kind of younger guys from the Serie A kind of era. There's Frey from Parma, probably Buffon. There's a couple of guys there, but for me it's got to be Peter Schmeichel for my five-a-side side.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can't deny how high quality Peter Schmeichel is, of course. What an absolute legendary goalkeeper he was. Probably one of the best of all time, if not the best of all time. How old is he in the game, though? I actually don't remember how old and how long he lasts in the game.
Does he start around 37, 38, something like that? I can't. I'm trying to think I think he must be around that age, because I think if I'm not completely mistaken, he's born in like 63 or 64. So yeah, he's got a few years. He's got a couple of years left. I think he's at is he at Sporting or at Aston Villa actually at the end of the game? I think he retired in 2003. I remember that. So in real life, whenever he retires in the game, I can't remember if that's preset, but I think he usually lasts a couple of years extra.
Yeah, no, I mean, as you say, Aston Villa. Aston Villa actually was one of my favorite teams to start as. They sort of have this nice hybrid of quite high quality players, but they're all quite aging, and they're not in financial turmoil, but they're not completely rich. So it was a little bit of a challenge when I understood less about the game. So it was actually very easy nowadays. I mean, if I went back to it now, you get like £8 million. You can do so much of £8 million at the start of the game. But yeah, Peter Schmeichel definitely was first choice. You would never sell him or try move him on. I think, sadly, you say he doesn't hang around in the game for very long. Unfortunately, he lasts like in real life way longer than he did in the game. Like, because he lasted into his 40s, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was. I think he was 40 when he retired, because he went to Portugal, didn't he? And then he for some obscure reason came back. I mean, presumably because he lives in Manchester. He wanted to live in the area. I don't know, but he came back. I think he went to Portugal. Or was that's even before? I think Villa's actually post his Portugal days. I think he left. He went from Manchester United, then he went to Sporting in Portugal, and then he came back and did a season in Villa and a season or two in City, I think, after that. So which perhaps for his own personal legacy wasn't doing many favors. I mean, he's still a big name, obviously, and could still like draw in the crowds. But I don't think. I mean, from even with my reddest and whitest glasses on, for me, it's always going to be his performances for Denmark and for Manchester United. And I mean, personally for Brøndby, for me, but for many, probably his performances for Manchester United, that will, for that kind of decade he was there, that will sort of stand the test of the time, rather than his performances in Championship Manager. But I still feel that he's a valid selection, because I'm sure he's still a great goalkeeper. If you have him the first couple of seasons in the game, I'm sure he'll still do a relatively decent job for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. On just a pure stats basis, the man has got it all when it comes to goalkeeper. And yeah, in real life, he was the best thing about him from my point of view, was sort of his like passion, and just like if he needed to rally up the troops or be absolutely berating one of his centre backs, he would go ham. He would absolutely not hold any punch. It was a sight to see. Um, and I was not a Man United fan, but my God, when I saw him on TV, I was captivated. Yeah, and he's probably one of my favorite goalkeepers. So absolutely, I can't neglect that choice. And when it comes to this podcast, we're not looking for any youthful prospects or anything. This is the ultimate team as for you. It doesn't matter if it's your favorite in real life, in the game, or like if it only lasts for one game and then they break their leg, it's fine. we're not judging that. So yeah, no, that's an absolutely brilliant. It's not going to just be a Denmark team, is it?
No, he is the sadly 2000 wasn't it? It was a little bit past our golden years. So there aren't any more Danes in there. I think Jon Dahl Tomasson is probably the best Dane in the game, apart from Ebbe Sand maybe, and that probably says a fair bit of where the national team was at that particular moment in time. So not a lot of world beaters. Thomas Gravers, and there's obviously players that, if you are into the game, I mean, you will obviously know. There's a couple of guys from a small Danish team or small Danish club called Dalum, Emil Debski, and there's a goalkeeper. I forget his name. I think he's a goalkeeper or a central midfielder. Either way, there's a couple of guys in the database that are kind of a little bit overpowered. Johan something as well, that you can pick up for pennies. There are some Danish prospects, but in terms of real Danish players that were any good at the time, we're kind of it's a few and far between, I think, is a term.
Definitely, and not to jump the gun, but is Peter Schmeichel himself? Is he going to be the captain?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. For I mean, I was going to say that the next two guys that we're going to talk about could easily be the captains as well. They certainly were in real life, but I think with his, as you already mentioned, with his presence and the way that he kind of used to speak to his defenders, I think you can't really look past Peter Schmeichel as captain of the side. So could be controversial with a couple of big captains coming up next, but Peter Schmeichel would be my choice definitely.
Right. Well, I'm now curious. Right. Let's talk about the next man and the defender. And now it gets a bit more curious because you've got not just a selection of defender, but they could be a fullback, they could be a wing back, they could be a central defender. We'll see. Who is your choice?
Yeah, so my choice is someone who could do a little bit of everything. Whether he'd be brilliant at it in the game or not is perhaps up for debate. But I think he could. For me, it's got to be. So it's based on both real life and on Championship Manager. And for me, it's got to be Paolo Maldini, and he's going to be my defender. Again, he's probably not exactly the youngest at the start of the game, but I don't think it matters really. He's still among the best. He's, maybe you could argue there are Nesta and there are a couple of other guys, Cannavaro maybe. There are a couple of defenders maybe in the game that are a little bit better, just purely stats wise. But I think he's still, exceptionally strong in the game, and still with quite a few years on him, and just a brilliant all round player. Plus, he's got that one club. I mean, it's almost a shame to buy him, isn't it? If you don't start at AC Milan, because he's one of these kind of. He was already at the time one of these one. I mean, I know he probably still had like 6 or 7 years left on his actual career, but he was already at that point. He'd already played for. I would say he's probably got about 15 seasons, 14, 15 seasons with AC Milan under his belt at that time. So it's almost a shame to buy him for another club. So this is so let's say our five-a-side is like a purely fictional international team that we're picking, so we don't have to draw him away from the club that he belongs to.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, we don't want to upset any AC Milan fans. He is not going anywhere. He's staying there for life. I'm sure his grave is going to be in the center of wherever your stadium is. I have seen some news about the stadium, so I can't even say the San Siro.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the man is an absolute club legend, and that AC Milan back four, sort of when they were all like over the age of 33, it was insane. You'd get Maldini, Nesta, Cafu. I can't remember. Maldini was playing left back. Who was playing centre back with Nesta?
I mean, they've had Costa Curta and a bunch of people that's been kind of sort of various people in that. But it depends on what kind of year you're looking at. But of course, they had various players in there. But in the famous side, sort of in the late 90s, they obviously did spectacularly well with a bunch of people. This is post Baresi area, but definitely with guys like Costa Curta and people like that in there. Yeah,
It's
strong side.
The longevity. It was insanity because obviously that back four didn't really change much from like 98 to 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And all those players were world class. They were world beaters. I mean, I remember obviously, I mean, I'm sure we all remember the 2005 Champions League final. Absolutely intense. And probably definitely not their most defensively sound performance. In fact, I don't know how on earth two of those goals went in against them, but it happened. It's history now. But the fact that those players at that age were still performing at a world-beating level, it's absolutely. And Maldini, he'd be 41 in real life, and there'd be no stopping him. He could play for any team, and even then, even though he could have played for any team at any time, he stayed with AC Milan and this fictional nation of the five-a-side team. And every single performance, it was so consistent. I've never actually got him in the game. Have you actually managed to pry him out away from AC Milan before?
I very rarely play with teams that are of that kind of caliber. So it for me it's for me it's more of a dream. I mean, I have had the odd AC Milan save just to see how it goes, but no, his longevity and his kind of performances. I mean, if you I don't remember watching every single game he played, obviously, but I was watching a lot of Italian football in the early to mid to late 90s, and he was not ever present, but it is very, very rare that he missed. I think he had maybe like 1 or 2 seasons where he didn't play the vast majority of league games. I think he's maybe had like a couple of sort of seasons with injury, and it wasn't until, as you say, the actual 2005 was kind of the turning point for him, when he started to play less than 100% of the league games, and in January just sort of like dropping down a little bit, which is perhaps fair when you're in your sort of like late 30s, pushing on to 40. Then maybe that's a fair point. So I just think because of the the way that he plays the game, I mean that he's so classy. He can play as a central defender. He can play left back. He's obviously most famous for playing left. Most people probably remember him from playing left back, but being right-footed didn't seem to kind of damage him, his potential in any way. So I just think he's very, very classy. He's obviously a potential captain for the club as well, and just an all-round very, very, very good defender.
Yeah, and I mean, not that it matters in this five-a-side team. It doesn't have to make sense tactically at all. Obviously, we're not able to pit these teams against each other. That would be season 2, obviously, where we pit people together and we create a simulation, and your virtual Maldini can absolutely dominate that back line. But yeah, you've got a versatile defender in himself as well. I'm sure he could have played anywhere on that back line if need be, and he put a damn good shift in and not let you down every single game. You'd never see a bad performance. So consistent, absolutely. And especially that era of Italian football was very, very special, and obviously known for their defensive prowess.
Yeah, hugely competitive. Yeah, hugely competitive. I mean, now it's a bit of a different story with Italian football. I mean, obviously, a lot of people who didn't watch Italian football in the 90s will go like, Serie A, is it really all that what it's cracked up to be? Is it not really just all about Juventus? But they definitely had their fair share before the money kind of started to become so much more prevalent as a selling point for the Premier League. Then definitely Serie A was kind of the place to watch. I personally think, but personal preference as well, style of football and the kind of audience participation and what you're looking for in a football game. So, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned any sort of player from that sort of era. Immediately, someone like Pirlo comes to mind, and you go, "Oh!" I mean, I was a huge fan of Gattuso.
Mm-hmm.
I like a tough defensive midfielder, and he was just ridiculous. He was like a caricature of himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single game, he'd carry himself like he's going into a boxing match, and I think he treated it like a boxing match half the time. And it was absolutely, he'd put the fear into every single player who tried to run past him. It was, and even seeing him as a manager, it was just as fun to see that sort of doggedness. And he was quite unusual for the Italian league as well, because everyone was so like composed, and then he just comes in dogged, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, definitely agree with Gattuso there. He's another central defensive central midfielder that could have made it onto my five-a-side team, but I thought, let's get a little bit more variety. So I have gone for someone else, but we'll get to that in a second probably.
Well, let's hear it right now. I want to know who beat out Gattuso.
Yeah, so I mean, and this is based on, I would say, a little bit more. Whereas Piers Schmeichel and Maldini a little bit based more in kind of reality, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
This is based in almost purely on Championship Manager, although a very, very good footballer, Patrick Vieira,
Right.
is going to be the defensive central midfielder. Not only is he arguably the best player in the game when you start the game by numbers of, if you take every player's attributes and count them up and you find the one with the highest number, he's going to be very, very near the top with regards to how many 20s he's got for various attributes. And I think he's just a must if you want to have the best central defensive midfielder in the game. I mean, the other positions you can argue about: who's the best goalkeeper, who's the best central defender, your best wing backs, your best, for every other position, you can make a case in the game that there's someone who's equally as good or maybe even a little bit better than whatever you suggest. If you're having a discussion around Championship Manager and you go, who's the best defensive central midfielder in the game, and anyone says anything other than Patrick Vieira, they are just wrong. It's just whether you rate him in real life or you think whatever you think about him in general, whether you're an Arsenal fan or Tottenham fan or whatever, then I think for me in the game, he's got to be like head and shoulders above everyone else in that particular position. So that's the main reason why I've selected him.
That is a hell of a bold statement immediately in the first episode of that. If you don't pick Patrick Vieira for defensive midfielder, you are wrong. That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I do agree. In terms of stats, he's terrifying. There's so many 20s. It's bewildering. He's literally got everything. I think you probably could play him up front and he would do fine. It's kind of scary seeing that mathematical advantage that he's just got over every single player. Even in other positions, he's just got it all. Like, the only thing he hasn't got is handling.
Yeah,
if he had handling, then he would have everything.
Yeah, if you do a search based on, let's say you're going through your player search and you're thinking, oh, I need a new striker, and then you put in, great numbers for, I don't know, heading and finishing and what, you know what I mean? He can come up when you search on anything. Really, it doesn't have to be particularly for attributes that relate to defensive midfielder.
Yeah, definitely. And in real life, he was a bit of a polarizing figure from time to time. But it had with people like Roy Keane, which was always a fun battle. As a neutral, that was a brilliant battle. Just two defensive midfielders who absolutely hated each other, and it was ever so entertaining. It doesn't matter if they're in the tunnel, like throwing insults at each other, and then they sometimes shake hands. So it's okay. It's fine. I think it's water under the bridge now, thankfully.
Yeah, quite possibly. And he's making a move into management. So and with his kind of profile, it's possible that he'll end up in the Premier League one day, I guess, just because of the name and the history that he's got with the league, the fact that he speaks good English and all these things. So yeah, it could be interesting to see him there and see what Roy Keane would make of that from a pundit's perspective.
Yeah, Roy Keane doesn't mince his words either. So I think it would be a must to have him as a pundit for every single Vieira game. Just that's gold TV. Like, once we have live TV and if that's a possibility for live football and Patrick Vieira and Roy Keane, we need that. I need a touchline interview. I want this to carry on for the rest of the time. But yeah, well, I mean, as you say, you've currently had 3 captains, a very greedy, leadership-driven team you've got there, all going to be fighting over that armband. You can't even have a vice captain. At this rate, you've picked 3 of the best captains in their positions, probably. So it's clear that you like someone forthright and influential in the game.
Yeah, I think it's important in those positions. I think to have someone who can be a little bit of a leader and rally people around them, and it's just I think it's the kind of player that will naturally kind of rise to the top in those kind of positions. And I think, to be fair, I mean, the biggest legacy of Patrick Vieira, apart from his whatever Premier League medals, FA Cup winners medals, World Cup champion, whatever, European champion. I think he won the Euros as well in 2000 probably, and he's won, I don't know, titles in Italy and all this kind of stuff. I think the biggest legacy that kind of proves how much of a great player he was is the fact that we are now in 2020. He left Arsenal in 2005, and they haven't come anywhere near replacing him. They're still talking about, oh, I wish we could have a good central, an organizer, a defensive midfielder, etc. And the air just went out of the Arsenal balloon after that invincible season. He left to go join Juventus in the summer of, I think, 2005. And after that, I think it was 2011 or 12, 13. It was at least 5 years before Arsenal won anything again. It really just, I mean, there are other things that went out of the it wasn't just him that left the balloon along with the gas at that point, but there was definitely like a cycle of renewal that came to the club probably around that time, but it's been it was slim pickings for them for a couple of years after he left, and I think a lot of it can be attributed to the fact that it was him and he left, and he's kind of irreplaceable.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. I obviously I've already mentioned Gattuso, Roy Keane, and Vieira, so I don't think it'll be a surprise to people that I like a holding midfielder when you have an influential defensive midfielder. And to be honest, to the Championship manager's credit, and especially with CMO 102, it seems that the defensive midfielder role is overly weighted. Like, if you get a half decent defensive midfielder, they'll get a ton of tackles, they'll get high ratings every single game. But actually, when it came to real life, they were just as influential. And you look at the teams that actually dominated, they always had that sort of dictator in the middle of the pitch that was able to control the game a little bit more. Now, Vieira was a little bit different. He wasn't just a destroyer, and that's part of the reason why you picked him. Obviously, he could do everything. He was a bit of a phenomena. So it's when players like that leave, like you had Makalele at Chelsea as well, who, again, he left, and there was a hole missing for a long time in that position, and they recovered a little bit because they changed their whole style of play. But you even see, even in recent times, with Kante coming to Chelsea and then Chelsea winning the league, it was like, oh, immediately a player like that in the middle of the pitch breaking up play, it just changes things so much. So yeah, I have to agree. Vieira, in real life and in the game in particular, with those 20s absolutely everywhere. What a frightening player.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I managed to convince you. It didn't sound like you needed much convincing, but but yeah, definitely he would be my choice for the defensive midfielder.
Well, thankfully, I'm not a judge and juror on this. I'm merely a conversation treadmill. That's all I am. And talking of treadmills, they go forward, and as does this podcast. You have an attacking midfielder. Now I want to hear, because we've had all the defenders in the world. We've got a solid back line going. We've got Peter Schmeichel, absolutely indestructible. Paolo Maldini, ever so composed. And we have Vieira, an absolute phenom. Who do you have in front of them?
Well, I've got two players who cannot and will not defend. The first definitely will not, if he could. So this is my favorite. This is, I mean, of the era, post Laudrup era. This is my favorite footballer. It's Ronaldinho, because he's my favorite footballer, because it's about enjoying playing football. It's really, really important. And I don't think anyone personifies the actual enjoyment. Maybe, well, I mean, I can't say for Pelé and Puskás and all these people that were around way before my time. But of the people that I have seen play football, no one personifies the fact that it should be fun to do outrageous things as much as Ronaldinho. There are people who can do the same tricks, or maybe even do slightly better tricks or whatever. But no one looks as if they have quite as much fun when they do it as he did. So he's going to be my kind of like hanging forward attacking midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, well, I need to just echo this, because he is the man born with the biggest possible smile, having the best possible time, just doing what he loves. Is like, if I could do anything with as much fun as Ronaldinho looks when he's just dribbling past 5 world-class defenders. The absolute enjoyment and energy he has, and yeah, he wouldn't defend. He found that boring. That's fine though. Like, you look at him, he's an absolute spectacle. It doesn't matter if he's taking a set piece or he's running from the halfway line all the way to your penalty box. It's absolutely mesmerizing, and there's never been a player quite like that since. Out of curiosity, where would you play him? Let's say this isn't five-a-side, and you're playing him in a standard starting 11, because he plays in a few positions.
Yeah, to be honest, it's one of those players that I would just give, like, I never give players free. If we're talking about the game, I would never give him like a free roll, because I don't give free rolls in the game, because I don't think it works or benefits anyone in particular. I would just kind of play him, put him on set pieces, and then he could get like a 7 or an 8 or 3 goals or no goals. I wouldn't really care, to be honest. I think he's at Paris, he's at PSG at the start of the game. Obviously a youngster already with brilliant stats, huge potential. And I think you just put him in there. I mean, you can either put him up front, you can put him, as part of a kind of 2-man with 2 central attacking midfielders. And then whenever he scores or gets an assist, you just kind of think back to how he actually did it, and how he scored his goals and the kind of like the joy that he had when he did it. I mean, I like watching, Messi doing things. I can see the attraction of Cristiano Ronaldo. He's kind of pure pace and power, and combined with his technical abilities. There were some of the other Barcelona players, Iniesta, who's more sort of in the Laudrup style, a little bit slower, the way he can like croqueta his way past like 19 people without breaking into a sweat. But it looks a little bit as if, I mean, he also enjoys it clearly, but he's not. It's not the same. It's not the same. There's not that explosiveness, and there's not that kind of like just insane raw talent that he somehow was able to harness over the course of his. I mean, I suppose he's most famous for his 5 years at Barcelona, because he's a highlight reel, but was he a world beater at Milan in sort of the late 2000, in the late tens or teens, or whatever they are, from 2007-8 when he played there, and a few years on, and then obviously he kind of like wanted a few beers and chilling out a little bit, and went back to Brazil about sort of 8-9 years ago or whatever, when he was really in I mean, he didn't have to go back to Brazil in 2010. I mean, he'd only been, I don't know, 30 or something like that. I think he's 4 or 5 years younger than me, rather. Sorry. Yeah. So around that, he was only about 31, I think 32 maybe, when he went back to Brazil. But I think also the competitiveness of the leagues that he were in would probably have had something to do with that as well. He wasn't the kind of player that, with his style and his kind of effort he wasn't a gegenpress kind of player, was he? He wouldn't Jurgen Klopp wouldn't find it much use for him of pressing when he lost the ball and things like that. So I think that kind of probably made the decision for him to go back to Brazil when he did. But in the game, I mean, absolutely brilliant. You'll get years of many assists and a good amount of goals out of him as well. So I think he kind of has the best of both worlds when it comes to that. Where Patrick Vieira is obviously a monster, both in the game and out of the game. Schmeichel and Maldini, you don't get that much return from, but Vieira and definitely Ronaldinho, you're getting some bang for your buck.
Yeah, actually, this is the only player so far that you've mentioned who I've actually had in a team, which is quite exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I had like one of my first like really long-term saves was Wigan. Got them to sort of like Premier League status and like pushing for Champions League after like 5 seasons, and I think we were sort of stuck and finding problems making goals to win the Champions League. And we got a 34-year-old Ronaldinho, and I was overwhelmed with joy. I was absolutely just loving every second of it. Even at that age in the game, he's absolutely just brilliant. Like, you could bring him off the bench and he'd get a 9 and he'd have like 10 dribbles, which is, I think, quite realistic, because I think Ronaldinho would do that because he'd just be having fun. So it was absolutely undefeatable play. I can only imagine what having him when he's like 23 is like, because it'd be absolutely bewildering. And that PSG team in the game, you obviously have Nicholas Anelka also in there, and JJ Okocha. What a trio! What an absolutely terrifying trio they had at the start of the game.
Yeah, they definitely have a strong squad. I'm not sure if they usually do particularly well in the actual game themselves, unless you go in and kind of manage them and help them along. But they had a very good, they definitely had a very, very good team in that early 2000s. I think it was kind of, they were overshadowed by that Lyon team that kind of was it not around that time the Lyon kind of dominance started in France? I think they won like the title 7 years in a row from like the start of the 2000s, if I don't recall completely incorrectly. I think it was around that time, so maybe that kind of overshadowed them a little bit. I think I can't remember. I'm not sure if it's the first season in Champ, or it's the season after that they won the title, but then they went on that kind of sort of 7-year run of winning it, which probably overshadows PSG and their achievements and their players a little bit. and might have caused some of them to leave as well. They certainly didn't have the financial capacity that they have these days, PSG. So they were perhaps, Ronaldinho was one of them that obviously left and went to Barcelona, and other people off that side went as well. But yeah, a brilliant team to start with. If anyone is new to the game and they just want to have a bit of fun, then start with PSG, man. It's good. They have money, they have a stadium, they have Ronaldinho. What more do you want?
You should work for PSG. I think you can almost just fill in that blank with Mbappe, and you're done. You're sorted. People
Yeah.
will be filling into the stadium. I do have to say though, actually, you mentioned something interesting in that wasn't quite related to the players in general, but you talk about free roll there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have actually had, and I'll be honest, it's very rare to get a player with free roll. So I do know in the editor there's a hidden stat that says free roll, and it's out of 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine Ronaldinho is probably actually quite high in there. I've actually had like one of my first star players, and if I ever do an episode of myself doing this is one player who will be on there as a spoiler. Abgar Barsum, who is with Hurgoiten in Sweden. And he's a forward, center, left, and right, and he has 20 free roll. Now, this was when I was playing the game, quite young, didn't have a clue what I was doing, but that was the one player I knew how to play. So I put him behind the striker, and I give him free roll, and he'd get 20 goals and 20 assists every single season. He was absolutely monstrous. Now, that's an exception to a lot of other people. There's not a lot of players who I've found who work in that position. And I wish it was a bit more clear of who could do that free roll. But that is one player who actually managed to do it well for me. Now, I know with retrospect, I didn't know about the more intrinsics, the sort of how to win easier on Championship Manager, how to get the strategies so make everything quite narrow, get a high defensive line, etc. Maybe I'll do an experiment soon and try and figure out if free roll is actually worthwhile for someone. But yeah, it's you've not had any luck with it.
No, I guess it's just not having the patience, and also playing a lot in kind of the lower leagues. It's it would be a bit of a miracle if anyone in like the Italian Serie C, or if someone could crop up with those kind of stats. And again, it's like one of those invisible ones. And as you mentioned, it would be nice if you went, oh, this guy's got like 16 creativity, 16 flair, 16 technique, 16 passing. I'm going to put him in a free roll because he might be good at it, and then he sucks because it's hidden. The same with the set pieces. Oh, he's got 20 set pieces, but like corner taking is a hidden stat, and he's got 3, even though he's got 20 for set pieces, and he never gets an assist. It's one of those things, isn't it? So just something that I've never really felt the need to kind of experiment with in the game itself. But I might try it now that it actually came up in conversation. A little bit the same as the playmaker thing. I know your scouts can recommend saying, oh yeah, this guy's a playmaker and stuff like that. But you look at the passing and you go, oh, this guy's got 20. He's got good creativity, good passing. He's going to be my playmaker, and then he completes like 60%, and it's just a little bit. So it's another thing that I don't use that much, to be honest.
I mean, I've had, people listening to this, if you've watched the Youth Challenge in particular, I've accidentally got loads of creative players. It's becoming a bit of a problem, in all honesty, but I do digress. Those players do end up getting over 100 passes. I've had it once before. Danny Hargreaves made up regen. He got like 250 passes in a game. Absolutely pointless. Whenever he got into his passing groove, we never made any chances. Because like he would just pass to like the centre back. You could see that the centre back he was closest to would also have 100 passes, and none of them would be key. It was dreadful. But I've tried setting him as a playmaker to see if the game would really go for it. See if I'd get 400 passes. He'd drop. He'd get less. So that's another a weird one with this game. But actually, that is not. I just had a not so terrible thought. If there are people who are modifying the game, and I know there's still people tweaking it here and there, how about hidden stats not being hidden?
Yeah, it would definitely be something that I think would help would help people along. It's an option. I mean, you can use real names or fake names. You can use masked attributes. You know what I mean? So you need to scout people to see what they have. You could do that with the rest of the attributes. I mean, possibly. I don't know, but I have seen people who play like in the widescreen format. It would definitely. You can have more people in your. I don't know if you can have more people in your first team, but you can definitely see all of them much easier, and you could probably do the same with the stats. I don't know how it works. I just press buttons and and things happen. But yeah, those are things that I never really got into experimenting with, and I think it's maybe also how we played the game when we were younger. You know, the things that we kind of stuck with at that time. You found something that worked, and then you kind of stuck with it. And I never bothered setting the playmaker then. I never bothered setting the playmaker now. I always set piece takers for like corners and free kicks and stuff like that, and experiment a lot with that. I know people who've played, I don't know, 10,000 seasons. They've never set a corner taker once in their life because why the game picks the best one anyway, which may or may not be true, but
Yeah, and actually, and this is a mild spoiler for a upcoming episode of, I won't even say the series name just in case people do care about spoilers, but I actually tried to tweak the training for the first time in a long time. I accidentally killed half my first team because they all got really tired. So I tweaked the not looking at training at all. I thought I'll give it a go. Like I've got good trainers. They'll do something. My coaches are fantastic, but I need to customize it and make it a little bit better. Oh, fitness, that's good. It makes them quicker apparently. No, it also kills their stamina, and they had 49 fitness on the first day of the season. It was dreadful. So yeah, I don't blame you for being skeptical. Actually, now you've just said that because I'm terrified. It feels like that the game can implode at any point. It doesn't matter if you deviate from your formula that you've been mastering for the last 19 years.
yeah,
It's
there
all
is
going to go
that.
wrong.
Yeah, there is that. There is a bit of like kind of familiarity that you kind of like to have. So yeah, I agree with that. Training is another one. I mean, I do a lot of tinkering with the whole training thing, but then I don't actually. I think there's kind of like a mod you can get, so the kind of stats change colors, or you can like track it somewhere, or you can see the development. So I never even look at that. I just like the kind of role playing part of it, that I go in and I tell my coaches to do this, and then they do that, and then everything is better. So I just presume that what I have achieved, and this is kind of like how I live my life. I just presume that all of my decisions were correct, and what I have achieved is the absolute optimum. So there's no point in worrying about it, because if I didn't do it, it would have been terrible. Yeah, I have literally just made a string of all of the best decisions that have brought me to this place, and that's how I that's how I apply my logic to my training in Championship Manager as well.
I didn't know this was going to be a self-motivation podcast, but my God, you've made it. That if you've ever doubted yourself, just believe that you've made a string of good decisions until this moment. And they were the best decisions you could possibly make. I like that attitude. To bring the conversation treadmill back on track. That's
Hmm.
not how a conversation works. But we've got Ronaldinho free roaming around. He's making the plays. He's dribbling all over the pitch. And he's absolutely dominating there. But who's gonna actually finish the goals? Who is the main man up front?
Yeah, again, maybe not the most obvious choice, because I think he's like very young at the beginning of the game. So it's more like based on the fact that I kind of like him. So it's Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who's going to be my choice for striker. Again, based on personality, he's good in the game. Don't get me wrong; he's definitely not bad in the game. He's probably not the best. You might get people arguing, "Oh my goodness, how could you pick him?" You know, you could have had Shevchenko, you could have had Saviola, you could have had all these. There's like endless goal machines in the game, but it's kind of, as you mentioned, it's a list. It's based on players that you like in the game, but it also has to. I mean, for me, it has to have some kind of relevance to real life as well. And for me, he just stands out as an incredible character. His mentality. He's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but I kind of like that as well.
Yeah, no, I mean he the older he got, the more of like an enigma he became. I remember this is the first player you mentioned that I've actually seen live, which is quite
Mm,
exciting. I was in Sweden. I have a brother who lives in Stockholm, and there was a friendly. I think it was not a good side. I believe it was. a Southern European side, whoever it was. It might have been. I'm gonna say Serbia and regret it, but I believe it was a team like that, and it was a friendly just before international tournament. So Zlatan did play, and he started, and people were quite shocked because he just came back from an injury. So he played and he tried for 10 minutes, and it was brilliant. He tried, he outmuscled everyone, he chased every ball, and then there was one stray pass from Kim Karlstrom, who obviously Championship Manager legend. That was brilliant seeing him live. Just an actual real person who I've played with in the game many, many times, and he actually is good at football. It's remarkable. But he tried to launch a ball towards Zlatan, and he just missed it. I mean, it was very close. Good old Kim. He tried, but Zlatan just turned around, shrugged his shoulders, didn't try for the rest of the game. Absolutely. He's not going to try against Serbia in a friendly where people are passing like that. And he just sauntered around the pitch. He didn't care. He was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It doesn't matter. He can sort of get away with that. So that's my experience live from Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But yeah, as you say, you've made actually quite a tall team, I've realised.
Yeah.
Like in set pieces, you're going to be quite terrifying. Like Ronaldinho putting the ball into the box, you probably put Peter Schmeichel in the box as well. It'd be actually horrific.
He scored a couple coming up from the back in his time as well, didn't he? So yeah, that could definitely be a thing. No, I think again, you look at his career. I mean, he's at Ajax in the game, obviously, and as he was in real life. I think he just moved from Sweden either the year before. He came from Malmö and then over to Ajax as part of that kind of their famous youth setup. That was still, I mean, it's still in existence, I guess, but they're maybe not churning out the superstars as they were in the 90s and the early 2000s probably. But I mean, I think he must have been young anyway, 19, 20, and he kind of walked into that Ajax team, had a couple of good seasons there, went on to Juventus, and then he went to Inter after that, and then Barcelona, and then I want to say Milan, Paris. He went to Paris, then United, and then America. And I think he's he maybe kind of back in Milan part time now or something like that. Anyway, but just the fact that and he's not shy in pointing it out, the success that he's had at those individual clubs. Yeah, he's very, very decorated in terms of what he's won. And there are some people that kind of like maybe they're not passengers, but they have won things by being part of very successful teams. But he has always made like a big contribution, even in the one season in Barcelona where you could argue maybe he didn't really fit in with the kind of style that they had, with the pace that they played at. They still won the league and the bloody the Spanish Cup at that time. He won the league with Inter Milan a couple of years in a row, maybe 2 or 3 years in a row. I think he won a couple there. He won it with the other Milan side. He obviously won it in France because PSG were already super dominant then. He won something with United as well. I want to say like a minor trophy. I can't remember if it was the League Cup or they won the UEFA League or the Europa League or whatever it was called.
You're definitely right. They did win something, but I can't quite remember.
So, but he's always keen to point that out, that he's been a success everywhere he's been. And it's kind of difficult to argue with if you look at his track record. Whether it's because he leaves when he senses, oh, this is not going to work out, I'll just I'll just take this one trophy and then I can say I was a brilliant success, or whether he actually is a minor genius. That's kind of what there's a divided opinion on him. But I think to have a striker who's so big, so strong, at the same time so technically gifted, and such not on the pitch itself, not a particularly hard worker, but off the pitch, incredibly hard worker to keep himself at that level of fitness and strength and agility. Some of these kind of his spectacular PSG goals and all of these kind of like Karate Kid kind of moves and Taekwondo back heel flicks and stuff like that he does for passes and for scoring and stuff like that. I think he's just very, very exciting and unpredictable player to watch. And I think in a five-a-side, if you look at the other ones, Ronaldinho is kind of predictable in his unpredictability, that you have to stand off him because you never know what's going to happen. Patrick Vieira, Maldini, Peter Schmeichel, they're not going to set the world alight with their with their innovation and their creative talents. Zlatan Ibrahimovic does have that kind of like spark of the unexpected that he could bring to a game, both in CM as well. I mean, I've had him occasionally, and he's done very, very well. Scored many goals by himself, but certainly in real life, very, very creative and quick thinking and incredibly strong, and just an amazing player from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, in Championship Manager, even though obviously he's one of the few Swedish players in the game who happens to, be absolutely a world beater in the real world, a lot of that in Championship Manager 102, a lot of those Swedish players are absolute megastars, and he still ends up, obviously after the great Henrik Larsson retires quite quietly, but after he retires, it's usually Zlatan who's first choice on the Swedish national team, and that is definitely what happened in the real world. He's an absolutely brilliant player. I mean, I know a lot of people, at least on my channel, they are viewing from England, Britain, and they probably watched Sweden demolish England that one time, and it was just the Zlatan Ibrahimovic show. That overhead kick.
He scored all 4 goals.
He scored all 4 goals. The fourth one, Joe Hart punched it out really badly. It was like it was right wing where the ball was. Joe Hart was out of net. It was right wing. Zlatan does an overhead kick, and everyone's going, "Oh, that was stupid." He lobs the keeper, lobs the centre back, and it goes in. He got a yellow card for taking his shirt off, so he's an absolute idiot. But apart from that, it was perfect. It was absolutely, and like, I don't think it wasn't a great England side, but they were still like obviously top like 5% in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he just scored 4 goals like that, just 1, 2, 3, and the fourth being absolutely world beating. Yeah, you don't know what you expect of him, and yeah, he kept reinventing himself. But as for Championship Manager, I think you have already made a team that's absolutely ridiculous to try and defend against and to score goals against. It's going to be terrifying if there is ever a simulation, because I think you've automatically won.
Well, we'll see.
Players are.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that will come up with some more interesting players, I think, from the Championship Manager database than the one that I've come up with. But I thought it was important to pick players that can actually play at the beginning of the game, that that also have some kind of the people who do follow my Twitter thing will know that I'm not a fan of these kind of like players that weren't any good in real life and happened to have fantastic stats in Championship Manager. So they were never really on my radar for selection. But and these are players that you can, if you play the game, you can buy all 5 and you can play them from the start with whatever team that you want to play with, and they'll do a kind of a half decent job, I think. And it was a good point that you make about Zlatan there, the fact that he's been able to kind of reinvent himself and perform in any situation that he's been in, really. And I think the kind of the crazy kind of overhead kick in the England game, which is worth watching on YouTube just for Stan Collymore losing his mind, which is also always kind of hilarious. It kind of what it epitomizes it. I'll try and say that again. Either way, for Zlatan is that kind of the old saying that, I mean, it's kind of lucky, yeah. But the harder I work, the luckier I get. That kind of old saying really exemplifies, I think, Zlatan Ibrahimovic's career. Yeah, he's worked very, very hard on his footballing and on being a bit of an asshole occasionally. pardon my French, but yeah, he's been a little bit controversial at times, but definitely very, very hard working, and I think kind of completes the squad quite well. So it's spread out over various ages, at different stages of their career, but all of them definitely able to produce right from the get go.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening, if you think you can beat that, or want to just say your opinion of your favorite players from the game, and also partially real life, hell, this is a loose format. We're gonna keep tweaking it and refining it. Then there will be a form in the description, or in the notes of your podcast app of choice, and apply to come on here and tell me what is happening. I want to hear all eclectic mixes of players, world class and unknowns. I don't mind, and we'll see the interesting mixes we'll get. But with that, thank you very much, Martin. It's been absolutely fascinating. And what a damn team you've created. Go ahead and tell people where to find you and anything you've got going at the moment.
Yeah, if anyone wants to wants to know what I'm up to, obviously, at Martin PlaysCM is the Twitter account. At CM0102SL is the Super League account for those who want to have a look at that. That's probably the two main places. I do have a YouTube account which you can find for Martin PlaysCM. The same for the Super League. There are YouTube accounts for it as well, where there's a bunch of videos that I've done and uploaded. Again, trying to do a little bit of creative content through this period, and hopefully there'll be a lot more to come. But yeah, follow me on Twitter, and you'll be notified of any ideas that are in the pipeline, and anything that people in the community can take part in, challenges, etc.
Yeah, definitely get involved with those challenges. They're absolute treat. Every single one slightly different than the next, and you get hella good stories from it. So again, thank you again for joining me, and I'll catch everyone next time.